Welcome back to Deconstructing Comp. We are in season 6. I'm Yvonne Guibert.
I'm Rafael Gonzalez.
And Rafael, can you believe it? We're stepping into 2026, season 6.
Hard to imagine, Yvonne, but here we are 5 years later, right?
Here we are. So we are going to take a clear-eyed look at what is going on in workers' compensation right now, a few key issues, rising pressure, shifting regulations, evolving expectations, and like I always like to say, a growing focus on the human side of claims.
Yep. In today's episode, it's exactly about that, right? We've chosen a few key issues. We have identified why they matter and where the organizations have the greatest opportunity to improve outcomes, to manage risk, and support the people inside your own system.
So let's get to it, Ralph, shall we?
Let's do it.
Well, hello there, Rafael. How are you today?
I am doing great, Yvonne. How about you?
I am so good. I am excited for another season of Deconstructing Comp. How do you feel about rolling into season 6?
I am so excited, Yvonne. I mean, just the sound of it, season 6, hard to imagine, right? Because it feels like we just got started, but how incredibly exciting. This is really phenomenal. We still got folks out there listening to us, having lots of fun. So really, really excited for the next season here.
And what is our goal for this year, Ralph?
You're going to make me say it several times, aren't you? We're going to keep it short. We're going to try and keep it at 30 minutes, right?
30 to 35 minutes. That's our goal. So we've got a lot to talk about today as we kick off our new season. But just real quick, I want to take a moment to pause. As you just mentioned, we're so grateful to our listeners. We started this in 2021, mid-year, and we currently have 52,173 downloads since we started.
Amazing. Really is.
Thank you to all of our listeners for following along, listening to us, and we really want to hear from you wherever you catch us. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get on to our issues this year. Are you ready, Ralph?
Yes, ma'am.
So one thing I think we wanted to talk about is that we didn't really feel like it was important to list, like any particular number. These are just some longstanding issues that we feel are becoming more visible, increasingly regulated, and more costly if we don't, pay attention to them. So these are our issues that we've identified that we will be talking about as we talk about with our guests as we navigate our season. So the first issue that we identified is the evolution of mental health in workers' compensation. So Ralph, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But, over the past decade, we've seen mental health move from something that we kind of talked about in the periphery. We didn't really like it. We sort of cringed when we mentioned mental health, but now I can't think of, it's really center stage, right? You can't go to a conference where we're not talking about mental health and how we handle mental health within the workers' compensation industry. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with you, Yvonne. For those of us who've been doing this more than 30, 40 years, there was a point in time where it was just a no-no, right? It was just a component of the case and of the file that was never met with positive. Over a period of time, we have seen this change. And as you've indicated, over these last 5 to 10 years, we have seen a real change in the manner in which the industry is dealing with mental health. And that, I think, is as a result, and this is an issue that's near and dear for you. You've been speaking about this for a long time. You've been an advocate of mental health, not only for the injured worker, but for the claims examiner, right, who also handles that work. And we're going to talk about this, I think, later on. But I think as a result of that, Yvonne, it has become center stage, as you've indicated. I think that's an absolutely true statement.
Well, and there are many things that we sort of point to the COVID years as sort of being like that, that really kind of shifted perspective for a lot of things. I think that definitely accelerated the focus on mental health because there was no denying it definitely impacted. But I think that, especially around things like PTSD and cumulative trauma, the industry has really come a long way over these last few years to address that. So we also know that mental health issues often serve as barriers to recovery and can lead to, when we don't pay attention to those things, they lead to chronicity, which oftentimes ends up costing a lot more in the claim. So I think that we're talking about it as an industry. What we haven't done so much is gotten operationally comfortable with mental health. How do we systematize mental health as part of the workers' compensation system? And I know that people still struggle with that. So I think we're going to see a lot more around the systemization of, how we process that as it relates to workers' comp over the next year.
Agreed. From a legal perspective, right? Allowing that claims examiner to accept compensability of that psychiatric component of the claim without the fear that it may add layers or cost. I think that's, for me anyway, when you talk about operationalizing this type of thing, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Is we are speaking about it. It is part of the conversation. In some case, case law and maybe statutory changes have brought us here. Now, how do we get the rank and file adjuster, claims handler, right, to make it yet another component of the file on a regular basis?
Yeah. Right. And of course, as you mentioned, it's going to vary a lot by state based on what the state rules and regs are. But you're right. We're going to be talking about this as it pertains to other issues. And it's definitely something that I'll be talking a lot about this year with my role at Institutes of Health. So really important issue. So kick us off on the next one, Ralph.
So very similar, right, in that medical world of ours, healthcare subsidies, behavioral health funding, it is upside down right now. We're smack in the middle of a time period here where subsidies, for example, on the Affordable Care Act, health component of things just terminated on December 31st of 2025. The House has passed a bill. The Senate has not taken it up. So who knows where that's going to end. But, we're talking now about the numbers that just got published 2 days ago, 1.5 million folks that have dropped off that type of health care coverage. Anticipated that once those folks begin to get new premiums for the coverage, which is expected to rise about 114% on an average basis, that there will be millions of folks that will then decide to no longer.
I think that number is going to grow significantly for sure.
I do too, right? And so historically, Yvonne, you've been around this as long as I have. We know that when items like that happen, when we squeeze healthcare in some other place or events, it lands right here with us in the workers' comp arena. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think what's important to take away from that is that we have seen this before. We have seen cost shifting before. When one thing gets squeezed, it kind of ends up, in the workers' comp realm. So when that happens, I think we're going to hear this a lot today. It's important to focus on accurate diagnoses, making sure that you're working with vetted clinical providers, understanding comorbid conditions and how that relates to the original compensable injury, and other key issues that are related to more complex claims.
I totally agree. I'm going to use a term, right, that we made popular 15 years ago, social determinants of health. It seems to be back again in all of its different formats and layovers, but that's exactly what this is all about. Watching the behavioral component and the effect, the bleed over. I think you're right, spot on. It's going to be something that we're going to watch because it will happen throughout the course of this year.
Well, and the other thing, in addition to the loss of subsidies for healthcare, the other thing that happened is the complete defunding of organizations like SAMHSA, right? So that's going to be one other element added to the loss of federal subsidies that I think is going to be a real indicator of cost shifting. So we'll have to watch that. And there are others too. We'll drop some links in our show notes so that you have access to some of the things we're talking about.
It's hard. Here we are in January of 2026. Hard to imagine, at least for me, Yvonne, what's happening in a month or two or three or six, right? Because it's changing right before our very own eyes. That behavioral health funding issue is significant, as the healthcare subsidies is. And I don't know yet where it's going to land, whether any of those funds are coming back or whether they really will be gone. And then what, right? What will be the answer after that?
That's right. Okay, the next issue is all yours, Ralph. Civil monetary penalties. But let's see if we can wrap this one up briefly, because I'd like to talk a lot about the one that's coming next. But go ahead.
You got it. You got it. Although by now you're an expert in all things
Oh, no.
Medicare. Come on now. Come on. So after all that hoopla, right, we had Code of Federal Regulations that were passed in 2023. They gave us a year, so they became applicable in 2024. They gave us a year within which to report on a timely basis all this information to Medicare. October of 25 was that deadline, and so here we are. Where now civil monetary penalties is real. It's a thing. As a matter of fact, last week on Wednesday, we had a nice meeting with CMS, who once again informed us that they expect in March of this year to literally produce documentation about civil monetary penalties. Whether they're going to be published and in what capacity and how long that's going to take them, they were not able to answer those questions during our meeting. But civil monetary penalties is here. It's a brand new component of the Medicare Secondary Payer compliance landscape. So I hope that folks have been paying attention and continue to do so in that regard.
Okay, so folks, if you have questions about any of that, you know who to contact. Raphael's your guy. All right, our next issue, complex claims. And I think this is, we talk about complex claims a lot. I certainly talk about it a lot in my world, as VP of Education Strategy at Institutes of Health. But I think complex claims are where our greatest opportunities exist in the comp system to, look at efficiencies, how we get better. Complex claims aren't, a rare animal. We know they're going to happen, right? And so I think where the opportunities are is to improve our outcomes, like I said, remove inefficiencies, unnecessary costs when they're identified early and managed with, evidence-based care and delivering care at the right time. I think that is just our biggest opportunity to improve. What do you think?
I totally agree with you. This is an area that you have spoken quite a bit on, and I think you're absolutely right. This is not the first time you're providing folks that kind of advice, and I think you're right, spot on it once again, right? It's don't let it get away from you, because if you do, it can get really expensive. All that Medicare stuff, it now attaches, right? So in order to prevent all of that from happening, in order to prevent that catastrophic component of things, pay attention to it, make sure that you're walking through it nicely, that you're looking at it consistently and making sure that you're making the decisions on all the points you just previously indicated.
Yeah, so, something we're going to talk about a little later is education. And this is where I believe education can really make a big difference, right? Also, AI. AI is becoming more mainstream in our daily conversations, both in personal and our work lives, right? So I think that, as AI becomes even more mainstream in our day-to-day workflows, AI will support decision-making processes and the routine processes, right? And it will allow us to focus even greater energy on these complex claims, again, where I think we can make the biggest impact. So, my bottom line takeaway is unmanaged complexity becomes chronicity, and chronicity is very expensive.
Yeah. Yvonne, over the weekend, I was reading a couple of articles, and I thought of you again and again and again. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you were an advocate of education is going to be, right, small niblets, if you will, and very guided to the individual and, going to be absorbed at the time that individual has. And of course, I said, oh my God, you're so wrong. But here we are. Boy, oh boy, were you right. So I think that trend has continued, and you're absolutely right. Especially in these type of situations, that training is so incredibly important, so significant, and to provide it to the claim handler in a format that's easily absorbable to them, right? Which I know you've been a big component of for a long time.
Yeah, what Ralph's talking about is anybody that knows me and works with me in any sort of educational forum, I am constantly beating my stick on the desk, right? We have to get better at delivering sessions in a shorter amount of time,
Yep.
get better at distilling it down into, you know, really specific takeaways, because that's what people need. So we'll be hearing about that and talking about that as the year goes on, right?
Oh yeah, but I thought about you a whole bunch over the weekend going, oh, she's in my ear again.
All right, so our next issue, Ralph, again, I'm going to have you lead on this. This is presumptions, and where knowing the jurisdiction and where you're operating is really important, right?
It is. So this is not a new topic to our list. This is something we have spoken about before. And as a matter of fact, we have had multiple guests talk about it with us over the last 5 years on the podcast. It continues to be a thing in our industry, right? State by state, instead of going legislatively or instead of going through, rule regulation process, right? A presumptive status of either a certain medical condition or a certain care and treatment, and usually to a specific type of population in that state, right? Very, very geared towards that, remedying a solution to a problem that's, very, very microscopic, if you will, to that area. We continue to see presumptions being used throughout the country at the state level as a source of curing some of those components, right? We saw it, I think you mentioned COVID previously, Yvonne. We saw it during the COVID period, right? Used substantially throughout the country by multiple states. And we have begun to see it, for example, treatment for mental injuries to specific police officers, firefighters. We have begun to see presumptions being used on a consistent basis in multiple states throughout the country. What are your thoughts on there?
I agree. I really enjoyed, we were able to do a session on presumptions at National Comp. And
Yep.
So it was a really good conversation. We had some really good dialogue there. And I think that, the case of New York, where they passed that regulation that was, mental health for all, they quickly pulled it back, made it specific to first responders. Real interesting stuff, but it underscores the need to stay on top of those, presumption laws, by state, and understand how they impact the claims in that state.
Yep. Stay tuned, everybody, because I think more are coming.
So this one is not necessarily a new topic. We've talked about this before. I know I talk about it all the time, as you said, but it's employee well-being, and a term that's new to me, and I think relatively new. I think it was introduced this last year, something called quiet cracking. So we heard about quiet quitting before, sort of another thing tied to COVID, when folks were just like, when people started coming back to work, they decided to quietly exit and go on into retirement. That was called quiet quitting. Now we're talking about quiet cracking. And what this means is, this is what happens before burnout, before you notice, employees getting disengaged. And it's long before somebody leaves their job or gets injured. They show up to work, but they're overloaded, they're under-supported, and they're stretched too thin. So I want to say that I think that, and I feel really strongly about this, we see the organizations that have adopted well-being programs as part of their risk strategy, right? And I'm going to point to City of San Diego because that's close to me and I know that program very well. But I think the more organizations that take on employee well-being as a part of their risk strategy in a serious way are going to see really exponential outcomes because of that. Because what's coming, it's not going to get any quieter. It's not going to get any better. We're always at this juncture, we continue to be asked to do more with less resources and less support. So it's not going away.
You're absolutely right, Yvonne. We kept thinking the employees are coming back. The extra help is on its way. we're going to get all of that we need, right? For lack of a better word, like we were before. And it hasn't happened. And here we are now, right? A few years into it. And you're exactly right. Folks are cracking, right? The pressure has gotten significantly more and more and more. So this is something, I mean, and again, you lead in this capacity, Yvonne, right? Talking about not just our injured employees and helping them, but also the folks that work these claims. Because I think this employee well-being program or mentality, if you will, applies as much to them as it does to that injured worker, right?
Yes, and it's not just in claims, it's literally across the board. I think that, the companies, the employers that adapt well-being strategies, wellness strategies for their organization see when employees do get injured, they're coming back to work sooner. It just really helps to lift the organization across the board. Everything works better when the employees feel supported. And so, it's not, again, not just about workers' compensation. It's when people are feeling mentally, emotionally, and physically depleted, the risk of injury goes up. We know that. So recovery takes longer, communications break down. And we often say every claim that goes in the wrong direction, we can trace back to a bad communication or where communication went in the wrong direction. So we know all this, right? So claims get harder when that happens. And I think it's, like I said, the organizations that take this seriously, where they adapt wellness and wellness strategies as part of their risk strategy, I think they're going to see better outcomes all across the board.
You're so good about bringing this right to light and giving it to us right in a way that we can really understand it. Because 4 or 5 years ago, it's no, we're good. No, thanks, but no thanks. No, I don't want to go there. That's extra cost. Here we are 5 years later, where the burden and the weight has gotten so heavy that folks are beginning to say, all right, let me hear it, right? I want to participate. I can see my folks needing that kind of employee well-being program, if you will. So it's sort of unfortunate, right, that we have fought it all this time, but I think we are seeing a push to and an acceptance of.
So here we go. Our rapid fire watch list for 2026 includes a topic that's near and dear to both of us, DEI and diversity. So right now, Ralph, it's a really tough time. Our country is deeply divided on many issues. It's not just our country either. We see this all over the world, right? But rather than getting into the extremes and talking about what's right and what's not right, I think that you and I are on the same page with this, and that is that we believe that diversity is good. Diversity strengthens organizations, and when organizations adopt diversity and allow diversity, that's when we see a really good range of experiences and perspectives. Decision-making improves, outcomes get better, and we see systems that serve people from all walks of life. And that's really important in our industry, right?
Agreed 100%. We cannot escape it. We are a diverse country. Just look at our population, right? Look at the folks around us, at every employer, at every corporate entity out there. So I think these are wise words. And I think we've come to the realization that we just have to embrace the diversity and then figure out what's best for our company, what's best, right, to be able to produce best products and best services.
So on our rapid fire watch list, the next issue is education. We've already talked about this today. And I feel, Ralph, and I think you agree with me on this one, as we see younger professionals entering the workers' compensation industry, those of us with experience, we need to find meaningful ways to give back, whether it's mentoring, internal education, knowledge sharing, whatever you want to call it. The future of this industry depends on how we intentionally invest in our people. What are your thoughts?
Totally agree. I'm so proud of you, Yvonne. Last year at WCI, right, you came up with a new track specifically for new folks in our industry. I thought you did an incredible job of putting together great programming, great speakers. It's needed, right? New, young, and maybe not so young folks that are coming, to the industry that are here for the first time. need opportunities like that to be able to hear experienced practitioners and professionals sort of talk about these difficult components. So I totally agree with you. Education has been and will continue to be even a bigger component of this equation.
Thank you. Well, it was a joint effort. Thank you for all your support. And Bob Wilson also participated in the shaping of that crash course. And we did see a really great turnout. And we're excited to say that we're going to be back in 2026 at WCI with a new crash course in workers' compensation. So stay tuned for that. Love it. Yeah, we can't say it enough. Education is definitely important, and we need to really focus on sharing our knowledge with the younger professionals and help them get up to speed quicker than we did, so that they can hit the ground running as they come into the industry and develop that passion that we have, right, for all things workers' compensation. It's such a great industry to be in for lots of reasons, but education is definitely key. All right, we talk about this a lot, and I think it's here. We're not going to not talk about it anytime soon. AI. AI is already embedded in our personal lives and work. So I think the real issue with AI is adaptation. Obviously, how AI impacts you wherever you are in the industry, it's going to depend on what your role is, what your stakeholder role, your organization, and things such as that. But I think we should all be focused in looking at AI as a means to support decision-making, freeing up resources and claims professionals from routine tasks so that they are able to focus on those more complex claims that we talked about earlier on, because those require critical thinking, good and sound judgment, professional experience, and of course, human insight. What are your thoughts about AI, Ralph?
AI, Yvonne, as we got started on it, right, and you read up as much as you possibly can on it, and you think, okay, I think I understand. And then, of course, I don't, because there are 25 more layers to it. And as I try to educate myself about, those multiple layers, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable, I think I've got it. I know what an LLM is. I know what, all of the terminology, and I understand what's happening. It immediately gets away from me because it's so fast. It is changing by the day. What it can do, the ability to absorb information and provide it to us in a different format. Just when I thought I got it, I don't. So for me, this is one of those areas of continuous education, forcing myself to continue to learn on it. How about for you?
Same. So yeah, I'm going to go back to saying adaptability is key, right? We have to stay open-minded and make ourselves challenge ourselves to be adaptable. I know that in my household with my husband, who you know very well, we talk about adaptation quite a bit. And yeah, it's gonna keep us all challenged to keep adapting as time goes on.
You're not kidding.
Okay. Next issue on our watch list here is I'm gonna, we talk about soft skills a lot, and I'm gonna challenge the entire industry to stop calling it soft skills, because when we say soft skills, what do we normally think about, right? Oh, that's not necessary. It's not needed. It's an extra nice to have. Well, I am going to go on record to saying they're not nice to haves anymore. I want to call them core competency skills. So you'll see me out on, LinkedIn and social media. I run a bi-weekly workshop called Mindful Mondays Lab, and it's focused on self-leadership skills, right? How we lead ourselves. How do we keep ourselves sharp and showing up at life and at work as the humans we'd like to be? So I think that we need to invest the same amount into our workforce. And I'm not even going to narrow it down to claims professionals, although that is an area that definitely requires these kinds of skills. But what I'm talking about is the ability to have clear communication skills, empathy and compassion, self-regulation, and self-leadership. These are no longer, as I said, nice to have things in workers' compensation. They are core competencies, and we need to be investing in them across the board. Thoughts? Because you and I don't always agree on this.
So this is one of those areas, right? They're like, soft skills. Come on. Now, everybody knows how to talk to folks. Everybody knows how to handle a little stress or a little pressure. And I've learned from you in this regard. So I'm glad that you're kicking it up a notch here from soft skills to core competency skills, because for whatever reason, folks are not learning how to do some of these things appropriately well, right? To the tune of, to the level required. So I'm glad you're kicking it up a notch here. I'm glad you're setting it up now as not just nice to have, but musts. These are things that every professional, must be able to do well in order to grow and in order to do their job appropriately.
Well, thank you for coming up to my level on that. But yeah, I think that it's just something that we have to invest in, and not a nice to have anymore. So, and it goes back to what we talked about when you're handling complex claims. We said that almost every claim that goes off track, what is the thing that breaks down that causes it to go into that direction? It's something that has to do with communication.
Yeah.
So all these things that we just mentioned, those are core competency skills that are required in the job. All right, I'm going to get down off my soapbox. Okay, last one, and we got to do this one quick because we're starting to get close on time. So just want to mention, because it is a big deal, particularly in California. So California recently saw a premium increase, and everybody's raising their eyebrows about that. So what do you think is important to know about that one, Ralph?
So it is California, which is different than any other state, right? In workers' comp, it's the outlier. It's the thing that's different than from anybody else. And so the population base and the law there is completely different than in most other states. So we're watching it. We've got to carefully watch what is it that's happening, because the rest of the country, we normally learn from California, and we watch it to see, is it going to be spreading east, right? Is this something that we all need to be concerned? Medical costs are rising in California. Indemnity benefits are rising in California. Are they telling us something that all of us should be concerned about? The thing is that there is no other sign of that happening across the states in the country. And so we're watching it for now, right? But we got to make sure that we're paying attention, if you will.
Right. So I think my thought, because I'm not so into the weeds on this, I have to look to other people that are super smart about how these things impact the system. In particular, where I'm headed at the beginning of March at WCRI, where we have economic strategists that come to that conference and talk about it. I think the most important thing for us folks as lay people in the industry is, it's not anything to panic about, but like looking at what are the things that are driving those system shifts, right? And so in California, there's a lot of things happening that contribute to that. So anyway, food for thought, but we're running really short on time. So really quickly, we're going to close out by talking about an issue that's really important to both you and me, and that is in-person connections, right? We do not have enough time to do an overview of all the events that you attend, because you attend, in my opinion, way too many. But I do want to say that I think that it is important for all of us to get out at least to a couple of events per year, connect with your peers and your colleagues, learn, just connect, because we really believe it's an important thing to do, to stay sharp in our industry. So I'm going to give my top 5 picks of events to go to. And then Ralph, you've got a couple to add, but here real quick and rapid fire. So I already mentioned it, Workers' Compensation Research Institute in Boston at the beginning of March. Always one of my top favorites. It's a great place to go and get really up to speed on emerging trends in workers' compensation. The next one is National Council on Self-Insurance, NCSI. That is going to be in early June, and it's going to be in California this year. So the last couple of years, it's been in St. Pete, one of our favorite places at the Don Cesar, shifting over to the West Coast, and I think it's a really important conference. Workers' Compensation Institute, we already mentioned it, so that's one big one for you and I both. One of the biggest events in our industry, and also one of the most affordable. If you can make it to this event, you need to get there for many reasons. Next is the Elevate Conference. If I didn't mention, WCI is in Orlando. Elevate Conference, this is in San Diego in the third week of September. And that has it's been growing. You've been to it the last couple of years. Really great conference to attend in a really beautiful location. So if you can make it, if you're on the West Coast, really good one to get to, or wherever you are. Then we've got National Work Comp and Disability Conference. Everybody now calls this National Comp. So those are my top 5. And I would say a bonus to that is wherever you are, whatever state you're in, try to make it to your state workers' compensation conference. It might not be the biggest conference in the industry, but this is where your state folks are gathering. The folks that service those claims in that state are coming to. So it's a great place to share ideas, connect with folks, and learn what's happening at the state level. Ralph, what would you add to that?
Yvonne, you did a great job with this. And I scratched my head because there are so many conferences, so many events happening throughout the year. But I think you hit the top major ones that I would also encourage folks to get to. One of the things that I would also highly recommend is CLM, and they've got at least 3 events that I always like to attend. Their annual conference coming up here in March, I think in Orlando. The workers' comp event that they've got, I think it's in May this year in Tennessee. And annual claims college, it happens later on in the fall. Always wonderful because it's in depth, multiple days. So I highly recommend those. On as your bonus, your state workers' comp conference. I love the workers' comp claim professionals. They're right here in my own backyard in Tampa, and they put together a nice conference with the Florida Bar workers' comp section in Orlando. I want to say it's April, and they do a fantastic job. Best speakers. They really take a deep dive on all of the state issues. Really highly encourage that state participation. And Yvonne, if you just can't get enough and you want to know more about all of those Medicare issues, the National Medicare Secondary Payer Network, they have a wonderful annual event, September, October of every year. They really do a great job of bringing together national experts to take a deep dive on all things Medicare Secondary Payer.
Yeah, so this is just the highlights of what we think are the top events to attend. Of course, again, as we say throughout our discussions, whatever your stakeholder position is in the industry is going to vary in terms of what events you should be focusing on. I mean, there's so many specialty events, right? There are events on for those folks that service restaurants and restaurant businesses. There's NARDA, there's CAJAPA in California. I'm going to throw out a lot of acronyms here. There's PARMA out in California, Public Agency Risk Management Association. What else? What are a couple more, Ralph?
What's the public risk, PRIMA, right?
PRIMA, yeah.
And there's lots of state chapters to those that do a wonderful job.
Absolutely. And then they have a national, I think the national one is in our home state, Florida, right?
Yeah, at Fort Lauderdale this year, later on in June. Yep.
Yeah. And then there's always RISE Professionals. That's more insurance as a whole, but really good conference to go to if you're looking for, again, the younger professionals. I would say get your rear into RISE Professionals. Anyway, as we said, there's more than we can name here, but depending upon your stakeholder role in the industry, look at what's important to you, the nuances that sort of shape the trends that are there, and pick a couple. But it's really important to get out and network and connect with the folks in the industry, because as we said earlier, sharing thoughts with people, even if you don't agree with them, it's always a good thing, and good things come out of that.
NCCI always has a great conference.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's so much out there to choose from every year. All
right. So we have not met our goal of staying under 40 minutes. So in closing, that is our list of issues and things to think about as we go through the year that are shaping workers' compensation. And I just want to say, as we head into our 6th season, one thing is clear to me, Ralph. I don't know how you feel about it, but the pressure on workers' compensation systems is increasing, right? As I said earlier, we're expected to do more with less. Costs are rising, regulations are tightening, claims are becoming complex. And we're seeing those, what do they call them? Nuclear verdicts. Oh my gosh, that gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about nuclear verdicts. But at the same time, I think the opportunity to do this work and do the work better is just phenomenal, right? We have a lot of opportunities ahead. That's when I get really excited. When I see opportunities to do better at the work that we do, it gets me really excited. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling exactly the same way. And we say it lots of times in our episodes throughout all the 5 seasons we've had. We have the most incredible people in the workers' comp industry, folks who are so incredibly great, right, at the jobs that they're doing and taking care of injured workers and doing the right thing and communicating with them appropriately. So incredibly proud of the folks that are in our industry and the work that they continue to do. So for me, right, and that's where feeding that and giving it back to them and educating them and continuing to make sure that they're feeling okay and empowered to be able to do and work on the next case. I really feel like that's a job that we have taken on ourselves here to be able to, from an educational perspective, give back to our own profession and to our own industry.
Right. So in closing, I think my thoughts are organizations and professionals who will thrive in 2026 aren't going to be the ones who just know the rules. It'll be the ones who invest in skills, embrace diversity, adapt to technology, and remember that every claim represents a human at the center who is navigating uncertainty.
So powerful, so true, right? Basic, but we've got to continuously remind ourselves that there is an injured worker at the end of everything that we do. Absolutely right.
So season 6, as we kick it off, it's going to be exploring those intersections, right? Where systems meet people, where better decisions lead to better outcomes. And we're so happy that you are, dear listeners, along for the ride with us.
I am so excited once again, Yvonne, and I'm so glad that we're doing it together. You make it fun. We have fun with each other and with our folks on every single podcast.
Yes, we do. So until later, Rafael, hasta luego. Bye. Rafael, that was so much fun to do with you. It's always fun to talk about and look at the issues that are coming. But this was a really good one.
Always fun. And I always enjoy it every year doing this with you.
So where can people find us, Ralph?
Of course, wherever they listen to their podcast, we are there. And we're also on social media, so LinkedIn and now YouTube, so you can watch all the shenanigans too. What else, Yvonne? Where else can they find us?
Well, our latest edition is we've now got a newsletter. Can you believe it? We're not talking enough about all the things. We have to put it into a newsletter, but I'm loving our newsletter. I don't know about you. It's called Comp Deconstructed, and we're using Substack as our platform. So if you're not familiar with Substack, we really encourage you to get to know that. And it's also going out by email. So if you don't know how to get it, or if you're not getting it, please get in touch with Rafael or Yvonne, and we'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah, email us or let us know on LinkedIn, and we'll absolutely mail it out your way. You'll be glad you did. It's fun, it's cute, and it's informative. I'm loving the format, Yvonne. Great job.
Awesome. Well, shout out to Arina Hawaii, my daughter, who's helping us pull that all together. And she's doing a great job doing it. So until next time, hasta luego.